Well, we learned something really important, which is that the nation continues to become more diverse. I am showing you here a presentation of the data in the way that we have traditionally looked at the question of race and ethnicity from Census Bureau data. These are mutually exclusive groups of Americans, in other words, white non-Hispanic, Black non-Hispanic, Asian non-Hispanic, other groups that are non-Hispanic, and then Hispanic as a separate group. And you can see that doing the analysis this way, the nation has changed and steadily changed over the course of the last 5 decades. What's interesting here is that today, in 2020, I should say in 2020, the Census Bureau counted that white Americans, non-Hispanic white Americans, single race, made up 58% of the nation's population. That is the lowest share that we've seen for white non-Hispanics in the United States ever. And so it's important to keep in mind that when people are talking about this decline in the share white, this is the big number that people are discussing. The multiracial population also grew. And this is the other big finding, is that the Census Bureau found that 34 million Americans said that they are of more than one race. That is up from 9 million people in 2010. And look at how big that difference is. This is a huge change. Why this change? Partly, it's that the Census Bureau changed the form or the questionnaire. So the questionnaire is a little bit different. Second, the census was done online largely, and online there was more room. There was more, the Census Bureau captured more characters in open-end responses. Third, the nation has been going through, even before everything that happened in 2020 with the pandemic and George Floyd's killing, the nation was already going through a growing awareness of its identity. You could see that with ancestry tests that people do. Also, the conversation around race and ethnicity that happened during the Trump administration brought a lot of awareness and a seeking of identity on the part of many Americans. And all those may be reasons why we see this increase, in addition to people just saying that they are because they are. They're the children of, say, a parent who's Hispanic and, say, non-Hispanic or white and Black. So there's a lot of interesting gains.
I'm here to talk about redistricting. And American democracy is built on the principle that all people receive equal representation in the U.S. House of Representatives, in their state's legislature, and in local government, things like city council, county commission, and school boards. What this means in practice is that all districts have to have roughly the same number of people. And because the population changes, not just in total number, but also in the distribution of the population, as Mark just showed, district boundaries have to be periodically adjusted in order to comply with this equal representation principle. This doesn't just mean that the districts should have the same number of people, but ideally, districts should also be adjusted to reflect the demographic changes that have occurred, so that the increasingly diverse nation and growing Black, Latino, Asian, and Native communities that have historically faced discrimination and are protected by the Voting Rights Act have an equal opportunity to elect their preferred candidates. Unfortunately, in most states, redistricting is a very political and partisan process. And when one political party is in control of this process, it can be used in a way to disadvantage political opposition. Gerrymandering is the common term for these redistricting abuses. It's what happens when politicians ignore the public interest and changes in the population to draw districts that are designed to manufacture political outcomes without any regard to how communities are treated. The goal of gerrymandering is to lock in an electoral advantage for a party or a set of political interests or current politicians so they cannot be voted out. There are three solutions to gerrymandering. The best is to give control over redistricting to an independent redistricting commission where map drawers don't have the same political motivations as sitting politicians. But with the 2021 redistricting cycle already begun, it is too late for more states to adopt independent redistricting commissions. That said, districts in California, in Colorado, and in Michigan and Arizona will be drawn using independent redistricting commissions. And to put things simply, the goal of gerrymandering is to take meaningful choice away from voters. And that really undermines our whole system of government that was supposed to be reflective of the population. Those governing us should look like us and should, broadly speaking, have the same political views as the population. Gerrymandering undermines that.
Nothing is more fundamental to American democracy than the freedom and right to vote. But right now, our democracy is in peril. And unless we take immediate and direct action, we will lose it. To fully protect against racial discrimination at the ballot box and to ensure that every voice and vote count, Congress must pass the John Lewis Voting Rights Advancement Act and the For the People Act. House of Representative members took a major step toward protecting our freedom to vote by introducing the updated John Lewis Voting Rights Advancement Act. This was a culmination of a tremendous effort by members of Congress and civil rights advocates to build the congressional record of ongoing racial discrimination in voting. In the past few months, both House and Senate committees have heard from dozens of witnesses, received hundreds of hours of testimony, and introduced thousands of pages into the record documenting anti-voter schemes to block Black and other voters of color from the ballot box. We expect the House to bring the John Lewis Voting Rights Advancement Act bill up for a vote on Tuesday of next week. We'll be closely tracking its movement and will continue to call on lawmakers to update the Voting Rights Act with a formula that's responsive to what's happening in America today. We also continue to push Congress to pass the For the People Act, which will create national standards that protect our freedom to vote. The House has already passed this critical legislation and is currently being updated in the Senate as a compromise bill. We expect action on that bill in the Senate in September. No matter our race, background, or zip code, we all value the freedom to vote and believe that all Americans should have a say in key decisions that impact our lives. Just as we showed up for one another during the pandemic and turned out in record numbers in the election last year, we must demand our leaders pass legislation that will build a better future for all of us, no exceptions.